You know, I am very excited about today's show. I have got somebody on the show who is not only going to educate us on how to build a small business, but how to build one when you're going out there to raise capital and developing an industry, right? Being at the cutting edge of an industry that is in the process of blowing up. And I'm thinking of it as the healthy food industry. I'm here with Paul Shapiro. He is the founder of the Better Meat Company. But he's more than that. So we want to get a little bit about your background, and I want to start by thanking you for joining me on the show today, Paul. How you doing?
Mark, it's great to be on with you, man. Thanks so much. I have a lot of gratitude to you for the work that you're doing to promote entrepreneurship in the Sacramento region. I have long wondered, why is it that more people don't start companies here as opposed to in the Bay Area where they're just throwing their cash down the tubes? I don't understand it, but I'm glad that you are not only a pioneer, but a real evangelist for entrepreneurship in Sacramento. So I'm grateful to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. Maybe there's be a chance to talk a little bit about that too, why you started here, and then what may be emerging. Because to me, there's how do things get rolling, right? It starts with a few success stories that catch fire, and all of a sudden things can become infectious. So maybe we can have time to talk about that as we learn about you and your story.
I would love to talk about that for sure. But you asked the questions, man. So
okay.
I'm down to talk about what you like. But yes, I'm pro Sacramento.
All right, cool. So tell us about the Better Meat Company, the premise behind the idea, and then we'll start diving in and kind of dissect hopefully a few lessons along the way.
Yeah, sure. So we're an early stage startup. We were founded about 2.5 years ago in Sacramento. And what we do is ingredients. So if you think about the alternative protein space, there are a lot of companies that are making products that you can go buy on the grocery store shelves. We, however, have a B2B approach, a business to business approach, where we are offering new and really innovative ingredients that we sell both to the makers of alternative meats and also to the makers of actual animal-based meats. And so what we do is essentially specialize in the science of marrying animal proteins and plant proteins together so that you can have a seamless blend. And that's how we got started, a real passion to improve food sustainability, because it just takes a lot of resources to produce meat from animals. It takes a lot of land, it takes a lot of water, it takes a lot of resources to do, and it takes a lot fewer resources to make plant protein. But people really want to eat meat, right? Like meat consumption continues to go way up. It's increasing in the US, it's increasing in China and Brazil and Mexico and all the places it's going to matter the most. And we got to do something about it. And so our strategy has been offer better ingredients that look and taste just like the meat that people love eating, but that actually have a much lower footprint on the planet and can improve public health because they're lower in saturated fat, cholesterol, and calories, and so on.
Okay, well, let's talk about each of those. So, or those two segments, right? Making the planet more sustainable, but then also the health aspects that I guess that we, any of us would want. I know on the Haney Biz show, we're going to be the Mark Haney show, excuse me, can't even get my name right. We're going to be talking more about the holistic entrepreneur and how to be healthy. And I am personally sort of on this mission to discover how to make myself more healthy and maybe live a little bit longer. So what you're blending meats and you're bringing in plant type material and putting them together. You're providing the ingredients. Why? What science is behind this, and maybe who on the team is sort of this expert in this realm?
Certainly not me.
Okay.
But let's just back up. So look, the planet is not getting any bigger. Humanity's footprint on the planet is getting bigger. And one of the principal ways that we leave that footprint is through our food print, primarily in the amount of meat that we eat. Now, a lot of people are interested in enjoying a more plant-based diet for the very reason that you did, Mark. People want to live longer. They want to have more years in their life and frankly, more life in their years too. And the evidence is very overwhelming. Eating more plants and less meat will help us do that. But it's easier said than done. A lot of people know that fact, but yet they still continue to eat the things that they have been eating their whole lives, their families have been eating, and so on. It's hard to break habits, especially habits that are decades old that you engage in every day. And so what we're doing is not only to help lighten humanity's footprint on the planet, but to help people make better choices, is we want to make the better choice the convenient default choice so that you don't have to go out and buy different foods and spend more money and all that. So what we do is we provide ingredients that enable major meat manufacturers to blend our plant protein ingredients directly into their meat so that when you go out and you get a meatball or a hamburger or a chicken nugget, you won't notice any difference at all. It'll cost the same and it's going to look the same and it's going to taste the same. But if you flip it over and you look at that nutritional panel, you're going to have less saturated fat, less cholesterol, fewer calories, and more fiber. And that fiber is really key because, you know, people in America, at least, like we have this protein obsession. Like you're always going to see protein part right on the front of the package and tell you how many grams of protein. However, the reality is that neither you, Mark, nor I, nor anybody we know is protein deficient. Protein deficiency is a tiny, tiny little sliver of people in America. Usually have some eating disorder or some problem where they're just not consuming enough calories in general. But protein deficiency is nearly non-existent in the United States. But what's widespread is fiber deficiency. 9 out of 10 Americans don't eat the recommended amount of fiber, and that is associated with all types of problems, from colon cancer to obesity and all types of other problems that really plague us as a society.
Just being uncomfortable with your digestion. I don't know what percentage of America is got some kind of gut problem where they're kind of like have digestive problems on a regular basis. It's common, I think, as you get a little bit older.
Especially, yeah. So you're hitting the nail on the head. And so, you know, look, meat has 0 fiber in it. Not one piece of meat has 1 gram of fiber because animals have skeletons. Plants have fiber because it's the skeleton of the plant. It's what holds the plant up. The plant doesn't have a skeleton, so they need fiber, which acts as the scaffolding that holds the plant up. And so if people are having a hard time eating more plants and eating less meat, we have a solution where we can just put the plants inside the meat. Now, normally you think of that and you think, well, why would I want plants in my meat? Well, in this case, you're not going to notice any difference. So I'll give you an example. Right now, Purdue Farms, a huge chicken company, is one of our customers, and they utilize our plant proteins to make a chicken nugget, a chicken tender, and a chicken patty that are now sold in over 7,000 grocery stores. They're 50% chicken, 50% plant-based. However, you can't tell the difference. When you bite into them, you just can't tell any difference at all. In fact, Food Network just named that chicken nugget as the single best tasting frozen chicken nugget in America. So think about that. The best tasting frozen nugget in America is only 50% chicken and 50% plant-based. That is a really bold statement to make. And in focus groups, when people try those nuggets versus conventional nuggets that are just made solely of meat, they find that 60% of people say they can't tell any difference at all. 30% say that the blended actually tastes better. And 10% say they prefer the solely meat. So in other words, 90% of people say either I can tell no difference or it's actually an improvement over the conventional. And so that's the science that we at the Better Meat Co are pursuing, is how do you get plants to look and taste like meat enough that you can blend them and do it economically and make there be no detectable change in the consumer's mind. So
the end product that comes out of your factories, what kind of form is that in? Is that sort of, I assume it's just edible as is. I'm kind of wondering, What does that look like? It sounds like it's going predominantly into things that are sort of ground up. You mentioned burgers or meatballs and that kind of thing. These are sort of like ground meat products that I think of as like hamburger or chicken burgers or things like that. And then you take some sort of, does it come out powder? What do they blend together to create the meat?
Sure. No, good question. We're very happy to show people how the meat is made. We don't have any problem showing people how we do it. But in short, so you're think more about hamburgers, hot dogs, sausages, nuggets, fish sticks, and so on, and less about, T-bones or whole muscle meats. We do aspire to do that, but we're just not there yet. That would require injectable technology that we just haven't yet conquered. We're trying to, though. But yes, the ground meat market is still a huge part of the market. Anywhere from around like 20 to 30% of meat is ground meat. And so that's a lot of market available for us. And the reality for us is that, we don't have to necessarily get into the whole cuts business, but we want to. Now, to answer your question directly, though, Mark, specifically about this issue on what it looks like, we are taking plant-based proteins, fibers, fats, and flavors, and we're combining them in unique manners and processing them in unique ways so that the end result is a dry, shelf-stable, granulated product. So it's not like a powder. Think of it more like granules. And those granules have everything that you need in them if you're a meat maker to put into your meat to give it a perfect seamless blend in your fish sticks and your crab cakes and your hamburgers and sausages and dumplings and so on. And so we have products for each one of these cuts of meat. So we have some products for fish, some for crab, some for beef, some for chicken, some for pork, some for turkey, and so on. And because it's dry and shelf stable, we don't have to worry about a cold chain, which adds a lot of cost both for shipping and for our customers once they receive the product. So it can be stored at room temperature and it just gets utilized whenever they're ready. And, to answer your question from a moment ago, which I just realized that I had neglected to, Mark, you ask who's doing this. I mean, we're a very science-heavy company. We have microbiologists, chemical engineers, chefs, food scientists, and so on who have been working for the last couple of years to perfect this science, because this is very different from plant-based meat and it's very different from animal-based meat. The science of getting plant and animal proteins to marry one another is just a different science, and it's something that hasn't been explored until now.
Interesting. So you take these products and you mix it with the manufacturer's existing meat lineup. How are you? So you're dealing with major meat companies because I could imagine. So I go into a store, I want to make sure I'm getting something healthy. So we have something healthy coming from the Better Meat Company, but it could be mixed with an inferior meat product to really give you something that's sort of like half healthy. The meat, it hasn't been, the cows haven't been raised appropriately, or the chickens, or so on. So you're sort of mixing something that might feel, look, and sound good because it's part of the Better Meat Company, but yet you've mixed it with. I'm asking this more in the form of a question. Are there any quality controls for what you make sure your product is mixed with? Or you just try to make
they'll be on our. Yeah, I think where you were going with that, Mark, is probably more accurate. So, we don't have any control over what customers do with our product, right? We're an ingredient vendor. They buy our ingredient. They can do what they like with it. However, it turns out that the companies we work with, the companies that want to do this, are probably the type of companies that aren't going to those low quality cuts. Like, for example, Purdue is known for a higher quality type of meat. Their chicken is generally marketed at slightly above what just conventional commodity chicken would be marketed for. And so the very type of company that cares about promoting public health or promoting a sustainability message is probably unlikely to go down that road.
Okay, makes sense. I just can picture people marketing things. You see people marketing stuff all the time as, healthy, and then you really go in hard and you're like, well, not quite as healthy as what it sounds like.
Mark, I have so many pet peeves about food marketing. I just to give you one I was talking about this morning with a colleague of mine is, like people talk about small batch, right? Like there's no, like people say small batch, which sounds great. It sounds awesome. But there's no definition of it. There's no point at which a batch becomes large enough that it can't be called small batch, right? Small batch is in the mind of the beholder. And so anyway, food companies make a lot of claims that have no definitions. And, that's a bigger problem than one that we're going to be able to solve at the Better Meat Co. But I do have a lot of pet peeves about some of the claims that get made, because as you're pointing out, Mark, there's just oftentimes there's a lot of hype and, I say there's a lot of, a lot of smoke and sometimes not much fire.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the sustainability aspect, the climate. So is this a 50-50 mix? So you're saving on your product, you're really saving, half the meat, or what kind of percentage of your stuff goes into a typical product?
Yeah, so that's up to our customers, but generally they're going in anywhere from a 20 to a 50% inclusion ratio. So you can cut out as much meat as you want. Some of our customers actually use us at 100%, so they make a fully plant-based product with our ingredients as the base of their formula. But for meat companies that use us, which is the lion's share or maybe the chicken's share of our business, they're going in generally at 20 to 50%. and it just depends on the product application. So it works better in some applications at a higher ratio than in others. But of course, for us, the more the merrier. We're looking to do good in the world, not just to increase, our own revenue, which of course we want to do. But the more we sell, the better off the world is, because we're leaving a lighter footprint on the planet. So that's really the main mission behind our company. There's a very clear how as to what we're doing, and the why is something that is very clear for us as well, because we believe in the power of technology to help solve some of these great pressing problems that humanity is facing. I don't believe that we're likely to just have a mass shift in our diets to start eating, more rice and beans and less meat. I would love it if that were true. I love rice and beans myself. But chances are people want more meat, which is what we're seeing all over the world right now. And in the same way that it's going to require technological advancements to solve other climate problems. Like, if you look at fossil fuels, yeah, sure, we can tell people to use less energy all we want, but the real solutions are coming from solar or wind or geothermal or other technological solutions that allow us to continue the lifestyles that we've become accustomed to without having to cause so many problems in the same process. If you go back and look at the problem of whaling in the 19th century, where we had huge problems with the potential for extinction of whales in the 19th century because we were whaling them for whale oil so systematically. And whales were ultimately not saved by sustainability concerns. They were saved because kerosene was invented and we had a better way to light our homes. And so these entrepreneurs who can come up with renewable energy in the case of solar or wind or geothermal, or even back then, the entrepreneurs who saved the whales didn't care about whales at all. What they cared about was making a buck, and they got kerosene. And next thing you know, whales are left into the oceans, and we're not slaughtering them anymore. And that's what we're trying to do too, to create a technological solution that can help us solve this problem of, yes, reducing emissions and reducing land use, but also how are we going to feed people on our planet? Right now we got 7.5 billion of us who are walking around on the planet. And it's estimated that within 30 years from now, just 30 years, Mark, you and I hopefully will still be alive at this point. 30 years from now, we're projected to have between 9 to 10 billion people. Now, as I said earlier, the planet's not getting any bigger. We're not going to be farming the moon or Mars within 30 years from now, obviously. So, what are we going to do? We're going to have 2.5 billion more people potentially. And it's not like there's just all this land on the planet that we're not utilizing that could be used for farming. We're really reaching that peak capacity of what we're doing. And, how much more forest do we want to fell? How much more of the Amazon do we want to cut down to create cattle grazing pastures or so we can grow crops to feed cattle? We don't want to do that. And so we got to get really smart and really efficient about how we can sustainably feed humanity into the future. And I believe that the type of technologies that we at the Better Meat Co. are pursuing are going to be part of that solution. It's not the only answer, but it's an important part of it, in the same way that hybrid cars are an important part of the solution for fossil fuel use. Hybrid meats are going to be a big part of the solution to sustainable food.
Without a doubt, I appreciate that. I often say entrepreneurs are the answer to all the world's biggest problems. And this, you're an example of that, as you mentioned to others. But thinking about the health aspect, which is kind of my hot button at the moment, the way you acquire or grow your plant material in terms of sustainability, yes, but also in terms of the quality of nutrients inside your products, or how do you make sure that you're getting the right stuff in the Better Meat Co. product?
Yeah, I love this question, Mark, because we have evolved so much as a company. When we started out, just like any new entrepreneur, I likened it to be, we were like people in a pitch dark room, and we were just grasping, looking for the door handle to let light in, to figure out how we could even create products and then sell them and be certified by the Department of Health. All these things that, when you're starting a food company, certainly I didn't know. Maybe somebody smarter than I would know, but I didn't know about it. And so back then, we were just creating products that we thought worked well, and with less of a focus on what you're referring to right now. The products that we had back then, we don't even offer anymore. We don't even sell them. We have completely transformed our product line to all products that are now totally allergen free. They're all clean label. Nothing that you would see on it would look like a chemistry experiment if you were to look at the ingredient deck. And so these products are better than the products that we had initially, and we found a way to make them actually cheaper. So in the process of getting higher quality, better ingredients, again, allergen-free and clean label, we're able to actually reduce the cost of our goods sold to give our customers better deals. And that came, yes, with scale, but it also came with being a little bit more systematic about our search for ingredients and for ingredient vendors and getting good deals based on forecasting and so on. So these are all things that we learned along the way, and we're still learning. I mean, we're only 2.5 years old. We are, a team that's very modest. We have only 12 people working here in our facility in West Sacramento. And, I think back, we started out the co-working space. And actually, Mark, when we started out and I came and visited you, we didn't even have any office space. We had nothing. It was out of the home that I was renting at the time.
That's right.
From a guy who is a wonderful guy who ended up being one of our first investors. My landlord back then became one of our first investors, and he still acts in a pro bono manner as like a CFO of our company. So he's a retired Sacramento business guy who is, really helped us out enormously, and we're really grateful to him. But anyway, so, it's been a tremendous learning journey. We still have a vast amount of unfamiliarity as we grow as a food company. We still have so much more to accomplish and so much more to learn. But we're very blessed to have investors who have really believed in us and have put their money where their mouths are to enable us to grow our company, continue getting customers. We're even shipping internationally now, selling even all the way to Australia. Wow. So, things are going well for us so far as a company, but we still have a very long way to go.
Well, just a quick question to follow up on something you said. Are any of the products acquired here in California, or is this stuff that's sort of acquired from all over?
Yeah, so if you go to like Walmart or Whole Foods or Safeway, you can get the Purdue Chicken Plus nuggets that have our ingredients in them. Again, it's called Purdue Chicken Plus. So, we're part of that plus in the Chicken Plus. And I know many of my neighbors actually enjoy them quite a lot. So yes, you can get them, and I hope you will.
Okay, but what about buying the plant products, the products that go into your
I see.
Stuff bought in California, because we're growers.
Yes,
we're great growers.
Yeah. So some of the sunflower that we procure does come from California, actually. So our ingredients are typically sourced in North America. But yes, sunflower is a crop that we utilize quite extensively that is coming from California.
Okay, cool. So I can go over to Walmart and I can get myself some Purdue Chicken Plus. All right, I'm gonna play off something else that you said. You began to talk a little bit about your investors, and I agree with you. Like, the right initial investors that you bring on can make all the difference in the world. It sounds like one of them is very strategic in a way. He's mentoring on the financial side and helping, actually doing work on the financial side. He's your landlord.
Former landlord, but yes.
Former landlord. He was the landlord. And as an investor, I sit here looking at this going, I missed the boat, right? So you came to a Hanging with Haney, one of my little meetups, and we hung out, and I liked you. I liked you personally a lot, and I liked the concept. And for whatever reason, we never got there. I don't really remember. My team or whatever probably may have, lost focus on you guys, but I was fortunate enough randomly. So this is kind of interesting story. So I'm part of Angel's List, which is sort of, for those of people that might not know, there's something, a way for angels to sort of invest through syndicates, which means you're not investing directly into the Better Meat Co. You're investing in a group. And I saw this opportunity. I saw Better Meat Co. Oh my gosh, I forgot about those guys. I didn't forget about the company, but just sort of the idea that you were in the raise. And I'm like, how do I get in? And I was like, on the day before your syndicate group was closing out their round, and I got in for a small investment, and I felt very fortunate. But I want you to maybe walk me through that journey a little bit. Why choose a syndicate? Who are the keys to getting the right investors on board early on, and how did you accomplish that, and where are you at now?
Yeah, sure. So first, thanks for believing in the company, Mark. We're really glad to have you on as part of the team. It's an honor that you are part of the Better Me Code team. To answer your question directly, the very first round that we did, we raised it on a SAFE, so a simple agreement for future equity. And that's become increasingly common for tech startups, and that worked out better than we anticipated. Like, we thought that we would need maybe around $500,000 to do what we're doing. So, keep in mind, there's lots of food companies that don't need as much money, but when you're doing something that's kind of deep tech like we are, that really requires you to bring on some real experts and buy some pretty expensive equipment, you need a lot of money. And that's what we needed, in order to actually do this. And it's for a variety of reasons I won't bore you with the details on, but it's hard to get plants to look and taste like meat, basically, let alone in a way that is a natural way to do it. So, which is what we always wanted to do. So that's one aspect. And we ended up having a lot of interest from, what I'd like to call the friends, family, and fools round. And I think it is kind of foolish. Like, I look back on it and, you think about how many companies that get started don't make it, right? It's got to be at least 90%, right? Yeah. And so, it really is a risky thing to invest in these brand new companies. And so, it's easy to look back and say, hey, I missed something, but there's so many companies. How could you possibly know which one to pick? It's very difficult. At the same time, we ended up bringing in about 1.6 million in that first pre-seed SAFE round. And that was largely from people who I personally knew, and just people I had known throughout my life. And it did include a couple family members of mine, but primarily it was friends of mine. And so people who are especially interested in the technology. So, for example, like Brian Ottens, who's an investor of ours, an early six-figure investor of ours, who's a NASA engineer. And this guy is, one of the top people at NASA who looks for life on other celestial bodies like Mars and on some of the moons of Titan and so on. Some of the moons of Saturn, including Titan, the moon of Saturn. So anyway, he was really interested in the biotech aspect of what we were doing. And he was a friend of mine, and he, because he was so important for us, joined our board of directors even toward the beginning. And so that was the first round. And we wanted to prove that we could not only make product, but sell it. There's a lot of companies in the food tech space who aren't selling much, right? They are doing really cool science, but they plan on commercializing years into the future. And so I wrote a book called Clean Meat, which looks at the race to grow real meat from animal cells. So this is not an alternative to meat. This is real meat grown from animal cells that you just don't have to raise animals for. And those companies have been around for 5 years now. They've raised hundreds of millions of dollars collectively. And, they never sold a gram of their product because it's so deep science that they have a lot to do before they can commercialize. What we at the Better Me Code wanted to do was to be able to have products that we could start selling quickly and that we could actually sell profitably. And so we took this approach of doing deep tech, but also took a second approach of wanting to have products that we could sell so we could demonstrate market traction, and the concept needed to be proven out. We knew that people wanted to eat plant-based meat, but would meat eaters want to eat meat that was blended with plant-based protein? So that's when we started working with Purdue to prove this as like our first major customer. We were selling locally to some restaurants, but that was very, very minimal compared to the prospect of a big company like Purdue. And once we were able to secure that account, which was a tremendous achievement for us, I think it really put us on the map, and have a lot of gratitude to them for believing in us. This is multi-billion-dollar company dealing with a startup that at that time when they began working with us, we had 3 employees. We didn't have our own production facility. We didn't have anything. We had a room in a co-working space. We didn't have anything. And they really took a chance and believed in us because the products that we were making for them, they really liked, and their R&D team really liked. And that helped us to grow and to scale, and they worked with us hand in glove to do all of that. And I'm proud to say that well over a year later, we're still supplying them. We've given them in full, on time, every single order they've ever placed with us. And that, I think, helped demonstrate not only our capacity as a company, but also the merit of the products that we were making, that it was worthwhile for a company like Purdue. So after we had that traction under our belt and had advanced our technology a little bit more, started hiring some more people, We then went out for our second raise, which we knew was going to be much larger because we want to build a facility here in West Sacramento, where I am right now, to actually scale up, produce much more than we can right now. And so I'm sitting right now in West Sac in this facility where we're spending millions of dollars to build what we're building. And it's, as you know, Mark, we end up raising a little over $8 million in this round. Now, in addition to strategics like the person we were just talking about, my former landlord, we brought on people like Johnsonville Sausage, which is one of the most iconic sausage brands in the world. They sell in over 40 countries. She's a strategic investor of ours. There's a couple New York City funds that led our round, who are, one of them is Green Light Capital, which is a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund. Another is called Green Circle Capital. And so we really went hard on the VC route and on the corporate VC route to bring in this cash that we need. And they have been really helpful for us, way beyond the capital. The capital is great. It's obviously needed, but it's just very small. I shouldn't say it's very small. The capital is only one part of the value that our investors bring to us. And our biggest investors have really been helpful for us in introducing us to various companies who we now are working with.
So you raised a substantial amount of money, and do you consider this your Series A? Is this a priced round?
It is a priced round. I mean, we called it a seed round, which, I think a lot of people questioned, and I don't care what it's called, but the first round was a pre-seed round. This is a seed round. I know it's very large for a seed round, but it was priced. And, it's a conventional equity round. So we've raised about just under $10 million so far in the last couple of years for the company. And we will do another round, whether it's called A or B, I'm not sure yet, but sometime in 2021, in order to help us continue growing. And, we're already looking at who the leads for that will be, but it'll be tens of millions because the facility that we're building here in West Sacramento it's an awesome facility. It's going to be totally state of the art, but it's not full scale. This is really a demonstration scale where we can scale up, produce more, produce better, reduce our own cost of goods. And then from there, we're going to want to build a massive industrial complex. Something, if you hear in West Sac, if you look at the Farmers Rice Cooperative, I don't know if you ever drive over when you come across the bridge and you see those huge silos right at the port of West Sac. That's the type of facility we're going to need eventually. So that's what we're going to go for. That's what we're going for.
Do you intend to keep that in California or in Sacramento region?
We would like that. I mean, we don't have plans yet. We haven't even started thinking about it. We're so focused on doing the current plant that we're doing in West Sac. But we actually use a lot of rice. And so having farmers' rice right next to us is pretty convenient. So there may be logistical benefits to us for that as well. So people always talk about how they think California is like an employer unfriendly state and how it's cheaper to go elsewhere. I certainly want to consider that, but it is, I love living here. And, I moved out here to be with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife, who is a Sacramento native, and her family is all from Sacramento. And so they're all here. So it's pretty hard for me to imagine leaving. But we'll see, we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But, we're not going to abandon this facility here no matter what. We're just building it now. So we will be operating in West Sacramento for many years to come.
And thinking about the pipeline for growth, so you've got Purdue, who is an anchor type of customer, with the strategic investors of Johnsonville coming on. I mean, who do you see as being the right participants for this customer pipeline? Is this going to be like 10 big customers, or is there going to be 1,000, and what might they look like?
Hard to imagine 1,000, much more likely to imagine 10. In fact, we're hiring for a VP of business development right now. So, so far for much of the company's history, I've been our only salesperson, which is one reason why we don't have as many sales as we should probably. But we're hiring for a VP of business development. So if there's somebody out there listening, you think that you would be great at cultivating new customer relationships for us, love to talk with you. The job posting is on Indeed.com. So you can just go to Indeed.com and look up Better Meat Co. and you'll see that VP position on there. But, the right type of customers are major meat users. It doesn't have to be a meat maker like a Purdue. It could be, think about like meat snack companies, right? People who make beef sticks or meat jerky, or it could even be, cafeterias, right? So obviously kids aren't in school now, but kids eat a lot of food and a lot of meat in schools. So you could look at, like, for example, school lunches, hospitals, prisons, other cafeteria food where this could be beneficial. So the right customers for us are the ones who really want to make it work, who share our goals and why we're doing this and want to actually make a positive difference in the world. That's who we're looking for, because as a small company, we want to work with customers who are sympathetic to us, who, if we need to change something, that they'll work with us on that. So, for example, with Purdue, we have constantly tried to offer them even better and better products, so that, the original products, we all are always innovating and always trying to come up with something better. So anyway, I believe that if we could get a major customer in every one of the major meat sectors, so beef, pork, chicken, fish, turkey, et cetera, that would be a real win for us right now.
In terms of the sales strategy, just kind of a question for my own knowledge, is kind of interesting. Is this, would you consider this probably the right thing for what I'll call a pull-through strategy? In other words, hey, I've got this chain of restaurants or this school district or something like that. They're buying product, but you wouldn't maybe want to sell it direct. So you're going to go to Purdue or one of your major customers and marry the two up. So you know that the Purdue product is going to this end user, or this reseller, like a McDonald's or a school district or something. And basically, you're providing introductions to the people that are actually serving the food.
Yeah. So in that case, that's what we would do. It's not like, the folks at, a school cafeteria are going to be blending this up, right? They're going to need their supplier of meat to do that for them. And so that's a pull-through strategy, no doubt. But there are other folks who would be making their own. So if you think about, let's take that meat stick company, you look at like meat snacks, those folks buy a lot of beef, and then they make beef sticks where they're adding their own ingredients. They're adding oils and flavors and whatever else they're putting in. So what they could do is, when they're making that, adding their seasonings, you add our product in and make the sticks that way. So in that case, it wouldn't necessarily be pull through. It would just be a regular customer relationship where, even though they're not a meat manufacturer, they're still processing the meat in a way that they could add our products in automatically.
Maybe just talk about the trending too a little bit, and then maybe we can kind of go on to share anything else that you might want to talk about on your business. But as I think about the timeliness, you think about Beyond Meat, you think about these other companies that are sort of catching fire out there, like what you are, maybe, but are maybe more well known because they're public companies. But thinking about this, do you feel like this is driven? I mean, is it? There's trendy diets that we know of. There's kind of a movement towards veganism and maybe being a vegetarian, and like how much a part of these communities does it make sense for you to participate in? And because obviously you've written a book, but are these communities a part of your strategy, infiltrating?
Yeah, for sure. So, it's true, like there is an increase in interest in plant-based eating. However, most of that interest is coming not from vegetarians or vegans, but from everyday meat consumers who simply want to enjoy more plants in their diet. They're people who are like saying, I'm not interested in stopping eating meat, but I am interested in enjoying more plants. And if that means eating less meat, so be it. Maybe I'll live a little bit longer. And that, I think, is a much broader category. So like the percentage of Americans who self-identify as vegetarian is very small. It's generally under 5%. Whereas the percentage of Americans who identify as what's called like a flexitarian, or somebody who's more flexible in their diet and is seeking to reduce the amount of meat in their diet, it's closer to 40%. So it's a much, much bigger audience. So it's not that we're not interested in the vegetarians. We certainly are. I love them. They're doing awesome in the world. I wish there were more of them. But the flexitarians are who we're really after, and there's just a much more vast universe there. But Beyond Meat has done an incredible job for the rest of this sector in general. You look at when they IPO'd, their selling price was $25 a share. Now, when I looked at it last, it was like around 130. It's just totally incredible. And not only am I glad for the world because I think they're such an important company that I admire a lot, but also it's helpful for us because it makes it clear to investors that, hey, this is a hot space. And, there's room in the world for many meat alternative companies. There's room in the world for McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's, right? So there's certainly going to be room for a few meat alternative companies as well. And that's what we're trying to do, is to build our company as a premier ingredients supplier, not only to meat companies, but even to plant-based meat companies, so that they can have better and better ingredients for their end products.
Yeah. Who's against you guys? So you think about, I think meat is healthy at some level. I guess and then there's carnivore diets and things like that. But are there certain, industry groups or lobbying efforts that are sort of trying to stop this from happening? And I can only imagine there's a certain amount of haters in there because people are driven by profits.
Yeah, well, as you can imagine, Mark, there's always haters in life, no matter what you're doing. But yes, look, there are like lobby groups like the Cattlemen's Association and so on, who, look at themselves and they think, these are a threat to our business. But then on the other hand, on the other side of the industry, not the people raising the animals, but the people who are producing meat, the Tysons and Purdue's and so on, although they do raise animals as well, but they're also, producing meat. What they'll say is that they see themselves as protein suppliers. They don't care where the protein comes from. Their consumer wants a healthy, delicious, safe type of protein to consume. That's what they want. And I think the smart meat companies see that the future is different from the past. Look at it like this. If you think about like the film industry, how we had a situation where for decades film meant gelatin film, right? And you had to go. I remember when we had 1 hour photo. Remember when 1 hour photo came out? It was like this amazing thing, right? Now imagine if you had to wait 1 minute to get a photo, you'd be outraged. But what happened in that, you had Kodak and you had Canon vying for supremacy in the film market. They both knew about digital, but only Canon invested in it, and Kodak tried to suppress it because they viewed it as a threat to their business model. And we all know what happened. Kodak went bankrupt, and Canon is now the largest manufacturer of digital cameras on the planet. Even though it completely destroyed their business model, they now are dominant in the new field. And that's the way that I see the meat companies. The smart meat companies don't want to be like Kodak. They want to be like Canon. And they're saying, yeah, we're going to keep on selling protein to consumers just in the same way that Canon is still selling us our memories. But they just are doing it in a different way. And so smart meat companies like Tyson and Purdue are actively investing in the alternative protein space. Whereas I think the less forward-thinking meat companies or the trade associations are fighting, and they're trying to keep the status quo as the norm, when that just never happens. That's how you turn into Blockbuster rather than Netflix. Right. That's just the way that things work. And so, even another example, I look at the tobacco growers. When demand fell for smoking, what can they do? Well, they're not going to be growing tobacco anymore. So really interestingly, there's been a big increase in demand in the last 10 years for hummus in America. Like hummus has skyrocketed in demand. And so now a lot of these tobacco growers have switched to growing chickpeas. And, good for them. That's great. They found a way to stay in business. And so that's the way that I think. We're still going to have farming. We're still going to have people producing food, but there will probably be fewer animals being raised and slaughtered with this new reality, because it just takes a lot of resources to do that. It takes so much resources to produce those billions and billions of animals and then slaughter them all and dismember them and everything else that we do. Why not just produce foods that we love to eat that take a very small fraction of that footprint to do?
You bet. Well, let's ask you then, as we sort of tend to wrap up here, to use your crystal ball a little bit. You think about, the examples of Kodak or Blockbuster, and what will the industry look like, I guess, if we were to go out 10 years? How might it look different? And then also, where does the Better Meat Co. fit into that changing landscape?
Yeah, I love this. So I'll tell you, Mark, 10 years from now, we are not going to see protein the same way that we see it today. A lot of the times for people, when they hear protein, what they think of is automatically a hunk of meat that came out of an animal's body. That's just what people think of as protein. But in the future, we're going to have a much more diverse way that we view protein. We're going to think of protein not just from slaughtered animals. We're going to think about it as being grown from the cells of animals. We're going to think about protein being produced by plants. We're going to think about hybrids where plant and animal proteins are married together. We're going to have microbially produced proteins, which are already on the market today, where through the power of fermentation that we can create really amazing high protein foods that are in some ways even better than the foods that are available to us today. And so I believe that just in the same way that you want an all of the above strategy on fossil fuels, you want geothermal, solar, wind, and so on, there's going to be an all of the above strategy on sustainable foods. And you're going to have a much more diverse array of proteins available to us than what we think of as protein today.
Yeah, and so in terms of your company, does this become $100 million company? Is this the type of company that can go public?
Yeah.
What happens over the long haul for Better Meat Co?
Yeah. So I don't know if you mean 100 million in valuation or in revenue, but I believe both
well,
are.
100 million valuations, you're about there, right? So let's think about maybe, I was thinking revenue, because obviously you're a tech company and the valuations are, skyrocketing for fast growth tech companies. So but what is this? I mean, what do you want to do with the company? Does it sell ultimately? What happens?
Yeah, so fewer and fewer companies are going public these days. Like the number of IPOs just in a given year is way less than it was 5 or 10 years ago for a variety of reasons. Acquisitions are far more likely. In the ingredient space, I do think that an acquisition would be more likely than an IPO, but we're open to either. I mean, look, we're committed to a liquidation event for our investors. Don't worry about that, Mark. I got you. But I'll say, we're open to any of these possibilities, and what would really guide my decision making on it would be not only what's in the best interest of our employees and our investors, but also like what will accomplish the mission of our company. We have a very strong mission to do good in the world by reducing humanity's footprint on the planet. And if somebody else owning us, like let's say a big company, let's just say like a big ingredients company like Cargill, if they were to own us, could they do a better job than we could? Maybe they could. So I'm not closed to those potential exits. At the same time, none of it would modify our behavior today. Our behavior today, whether it's an acquisition or an IPO, our behavior today is to keep building the best company that we can, to make it as attractive as possible, to make it as profitable as possible soon, while still recognizing that many of the companies in our space that have been around for much longer than we have, they still haven't had any liquidation. You look at Impossible Foods, one of the biggest names in the space. They've raised $1.5 billion to date, billion with a B. They've been around for nearly a decade, and they've never had any liquidation event. And there's no announced plan, at least for an IPO. Maybe they're working on it. Another company in the space, they make like plant-based egg products. They have raised about $250 million since they were founded 9 years ago. And there's an article in Reuters today that said that they're looking at an IPO date of potentially in 2022. So it'll be over a decade from inception to IPO if things go well for them. So we know that this is not a quick turnaround. Other companies in our space haven't had that, and we don't expect that we're going to be different from that. But we are working hard to make ourselves a very attractive company to potential acquirers, for a potential IPO in the future. And really what we want to do is just be of service to the customers who are utilizing us so they can do better. Meat companies are leaving a really big impact on the planet right now, and they don't have to. They don't have to. Just like the auto manufacturers, right? Like if you can improve auto fuel efficiency, you're going to do a lot of good. And I view companies like Beyond Meat or Impossible Foods kind of like the Teslas of our space in the food industry, whereas they're making a really awesome all electric or all plant-based product but it's a lot more expensive. There's a reason why electric vehicles are still less than 1% of the vehicle market. And it's the same reason plant-based meat is still less than 1% of the meat market. And that's just because it's very expensive. Our products are cost competitive with beef. If beef makers use our product, they'll actually save money. And so that's what we want to do, is make the better choice the easier choice, the economical easier choice, the convenience easier choice, and so on. And that's how we see ourselves, as basically offering a technology to the major players to hybridize their products. And I think that opens us up to a much bigger market than just the market of strictly plant-based.
Yeah. Okay. So final question for the entrepreneurs out there that may be listening, inspired by your story. You're obviously still in the early stages, 3 years in, but it's working. Lessons for that entrepreneur. Is there anything that you've gone through or that you could share with the entrepreneurial audience or the entrepreneurial audience that's thinking, wow, what could be a takeaway for me that I might be able to get from Paul?
Well, I'm still learning myself, so I don't want to presume that I have any sage wisdom for other people, but I will tell you what I've learned in the last couple of years of doing this. And there's two main lessons for me. Actually, three. One, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to lose some money, so raise more than you think that you need, even if that means you're going to dilute yourself more. No company ever went out of business because a founder got diluted, right? They go out of business because they run out of money. And so I just think, do what you can to make your company succeed, because the odds are stacked against you, and you're going to make mistakes that are going to cost you money. So raise more than you need. That's one. Okay. Another would be that you are capable of accomplishing so much more than you think that you can. Like, we look at these other companies and think, like, take Just, the company I was just talking about, as an example. And, you look wow, they've raised $250 million. They got products in thousands of supermarkets. How impressive. And it is. But keep in mind, their CEO, Josh Tetrick, had zero experience in the food industry. He had no expertise in entrepreneurialism. This guy, had no more business starting a company than you have one starting yours. Not you, Mark, but, somebody else listening. And so I just think there's so much more that you can do than you imagine. And so many of our limitations are self-imposed just in our own minds. And we have a poverty of vision or a poverty of ambition that leads us to not go out and take that swing. Because if you don't take the swing, you're certainly not going to hit the ball. And you just got to get out there and do it. And then, so in addition to those, I would just say that the way that to succeed is by relying on other people who are going to be smarter than you and more knowledgeable than you, and encouraging them to help out. And what I've found is that there's a lot of people who want to help us. There's a lot of people who believe in the mission of what they're doing, or maybe they just want to help us out because they are personal friends of ours. But, early on, we enlisted a number of people to help us for free. In fact, not just help us for free, to invest in us, and then to go ahead and help us for no added cost to us. So, that has been really helpful in bringing on people who know more about certain topics than we do. I mean, I didn't know anything about, doing our finances or anything like that. And we found somebody who knew a lot about it. And so there is a tendency, in my view, from entrepreneurs to think, oh, we got to do it all ourselves. Like, I'm going to just be this, atlas with the world on my shoulders. And I'm going to, I need to be an expert in finance, and I need to be an expert in HR, and I need to be an expert in logistics and supply chain. Like, you're never going to be an expert in all those things. So surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. It's worked for me, and I think it might work for you too.
I love it. Raise more than what you need. You're more capable than what you think, and rely on people that want to help you, because you can't build a great company alone. Paul Shapiro, I want to thank you for joining us. The Better Meat Co. is on my radar as a small investor into the company, and into you more specifically. I mean, I meet a great entrepreneur, and it makes me want to invest. And I knew that when I met you, and sadly I waited, but here I am, and proud to share your story, and look forward to sort of being a part of this in some small way, even if it's just a big fan of you and what you're doing there. So thanks a lot, Paul. Appreciate everything.
Well, We're honored that you're part of the team, Mark, and rest assured, it's still early days. So as far as anybody else is concerned, you got in early. So it's great to talk with you. I'm honored to be on the show. And again, let me express my gratitude to you for everything that you're doing to offer new entrepreneurs the resources that they need to be more successful. So I really am grateful to you. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, Paul. Thanks for sharing your story.
Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.